It's the International Soccer Preview, and we are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to our continuation of Series 19, this one looking at the players of the 2023 Asian Cup. This episode is part 2 of the Players of Australia, final selections and starter predictions. Here we go. Hello, we are back for part 2 of our mediacast on the players of the 2023 Asian Cup. The final roster is released and we are looking at Australia's selections. In part 1, we compiled a list of players and their likelihood of reaching the final squad. That was based mostly on their participation over the past 2 years, but we considered a few other factors as well. Today we review that list now that the final squads have been announced, and we promised in the end of the previous podcast to point out any notable non-selections, surprise inclusions, and new players. And we also said that we would provide what information we could on any injuries. So we will do all of those things as we go through the list again. And at the end, for a bit of fun, we'll also boldly predict our starting lineup in the Spotlight Review. All right, let's jump in. And we begin with the manager. And Matthew Arnold, sorry, what am I talking about? Graham Arnold is who we had, and we don't see any problem with him on the horizon. So we think he will be a starter. Once I get my graphics sorted out, I'm highlighting, if you're watching on the video, in green the ones that we're confident are going to not be a starter, as I said, because we're going to save that till the end, but make the squad. So we are certain that Graham Arnold will make the squad, or has made the squad. Anyway, he hasn't been fired. Let's look at goalkeepers, and we had a definite candidate in Matthew Ryan, likely candidate Andrew Redmayne, a possible candidate in Tom Glover, and two possible but unlikely, Joe Gauci. The other was Ashley Maynard Brewer, and we had one who seemed to be off the squad. Generally, sorry about that. Generally, we won't mention the ones who are possible but unlikely or seem to be off the squad unless they are selected. In this case, one of the two was. And we also have a new candidate added to the final roster there, and it is Lawrence Thomas. Lawrence Thomas, and actually I should have said right from the start that they did not produce a preliminary squad. They just put out a 26-man final roster. In this cup, the teams are allowed to bring 26 players. So basically any new players that were added are automatically going to be in green, like Lawrence Thomas here. So that is one of the keepers. So a bit of suspense here, because that means someone was not selected. Matthew Ryan, though, the definite candidate, was selected, and he is number 1. His number on the back of his shirt. Andrew Redmayne, though, the likely candidate, is the one who gives way, not selected for the final squad here. Possible candidate Tom Glover, also not selected. Joe Gauci, the possible but unlikely candidate, was selected there, and Ashley Maynard Brewer was not. So there we have it, our three candidates: Matthew Ryan, Joe Gauci, and newcomer Lawrence Thomas. Okay, that is goalkeepers. Let's move on to the defense, and we begin with central defenders. Here we have 3 definite candidates. The first one is Harry Sutar, then Kai Rolls, and then Milos Degenak. And if you want to review why we thought so, part 1 kind of covered that business, why we thought so. Here we're just kind of reviewing the list. We had 5 possible candidates here: Thomas Deng, Giannis Desnants, Bailey Wright, Alessandro Cercati, and Cameron Burgess. So a pretty competitive spot. They usually bring, I would say, 4 or 5 of these players, maybe 6, with the expanded 26-man squads here, maybe 6. Harry Sutar was selected, no surprise there. He's probably the top candidate. Kai Rolls also selected, but somewhat surprisingly, Milo Steganek not selected. Again, just one match over the past 2 years that he hadn't been selected for, so we are a bit surprised that he didn't make the squad there. Among the possible candidates, 2 of them were selected. The first one, Thomas Deng, and the last one on the list, Cameron Burgess, both selected. But the 3 middle ones, Gianni Stensnes, Bailey Wright, and Alessandro Cercati, not selected for the squad. Okay, let's go to left backs, where we have a likely candidate in Aziz Behic and a possible candidate in Jordan Boss. We had another possible candidate in Joel King. Joel King was not selected, and actually, whether it was the main reason or not, injury played a role in that. He got a toe injury, and his return is expected in February, mid-February. He's supposed to be back. So if the manager was thinking of him, that made it impossible. So the other 2 candidates, though, Aziz Behic was selected, and Jordan Boss also chosen for the squad. Over to the right back position, and we have Nathaniel Atkinson. He was struggling with injury. We did mention it in part 1 of the podcast, an ankle injury, and apparently he was really touch and go for making the tournament, but he was selected. Oh, we should review the candidates first before we get into that story. Anyway, I've given it away now. So our likely candidate, Nathaniel Atkinson, was selected, and actually the games he missed in the lead up to the Cup were due to that ankle injury, but he may be affected by it in the Cup and may affect our choice as to whether he looks like a starter or not. Anyway, the other candidates were possible candidates, Ryan Strain and Lewis Miller. And Ryan Strain was not selected. There is also talk of a groin injury playing a role in his non-selection. He's actually not listed as injured in my sources, but I read an article that said he had a groin problem. So Ryan Strain not selected, but Lewis Miller was selected for the squad. And there they bring 2 right backs. Okay, we have, oh, wait a minute, we do have a new candidate, so they're actually bringing 3 right backs here, and the player is Gethin Jones. He was eligible to play for Wales. He played for underage squads there. We won't go into detail because he doesn't look like a starter, but he has basically played for English teams and is currently with Bolton Wanderers in England. As I said, with Wales underage squads, but through his lot in with Australia, and I guess his selection for this tournament makes it official because he just got his first cap recently in 2024. So Gethin Jones, we've put him in the wrong spot. A third right back, or third player coded as a right back. That is it for defenders. Let's move on to the midfield. We had a player in the versatile midfielder category, Riley McGree, because we saw him playing in various positions on the field. And Riley McGree was also struggling with a foot injury and was a worry for this Cup. But like Atkinson above, it seems that he was judged to be good enough to be selected for the squad. But again, it may affect him. It has affected his participation in games leading up to the Cup. But nevertheless, selected is our likely candidate, the versatile midfielder Riley McGree. Let's look at defensive midfielders, and we had two definite candidates in Jackson Irvine and Keanu Backus, and a likely candidate in Aidan O'Neill, and then two possible candidates, Devlin Cameron and Massimo Luongo. Um, uh, okay, so Irvin Jackson, the two definite candidates did make it, Jackson and Backus, and also the likely candidate, Aidan O'Neill. And Devlin Cameron, the two possible candidates didn't make it, Cameron Devlin and Massimo Luongo, who actually I have heard has retired from soccer altogether. He's only 29 years old, but that was what I read in one report, but I haven't confirmed it. Yet, but that is the word on the street. Defensive midfielders and then central midfielders. We do have a new candidate. In fact, we didn't have many candidates there, just the possible but unlikely Alex Robertson. And he too is injured. We had him as an unlikely candidate, as I said, so he might not have been selected anyway. But a torn thigh muscle leaves him out until May 2024, so that put to rest any hopes of selection for him. We do have a new candidate, though, selected, Patrick Yazbek. And Patrick Yazbek plays for Viking in Norway, recently moving from Australia. And he is 21 years old, so a new candidate there in the central midfield. Moving over to left and right midfielders, we have no candidates in those positions. Again, we talked about it in part one, so we won't repeat all that here. But left midfielders, we have two likely candidates, Craig Goodwin and Matthew Leckie. And then two possible candidates, Our Mabille and Samuel Silvera. So Leckie definitely injured, a hamstring injury, leaving him out until the end of January. But the other likely candidate, Craig Goodwin, was or is selected for the squad. I've also heard about injury affecting Our Mabille. Just one article, and I didn't verify it. He's not actually listed as injured in my main source for such things. Anyway, Our Mabille not selected. However, Samuel Silvera, the other possible candidate there, was selected or is selected for the squad. Moving over to the right wing, Martin Boyle, his long-awaited tournament debut. The poor fellow was selected in 2019, but then injured before the tournament, and also selected for the World Cup, and withdrawing on the day of the tournament, injured from that tournament. So they, probably he's anxious to get on the field, but I get the sense from what I've read that they're anxious to see him on the field too. So Martin Boyle, selected for a tournament. Let's hope it's not 3 times in a row for him. The player who replaced him in the World Cup was the possible candidate Marco Tilio. I think actually I forgot to read the candidate, so let me just say Martin Boyle had been a definite candidate. Marco Tilio and Brandon Borrello were possible candidates here, and Nestori Irankunda, a possible but unlikely candidate. But I will make a comment on Irankunda here right away. So we saw Martin Boyle selected. Marco Tilio, as I said, replaced him in the World Cup. He is selected here also. And Brandon Borrello not selected. Injury playing a role there too. A broken foot, leaving him out until late February prevented consideration of him. He was a possible candidate and one of many names being thrown around as being selected for the squad. I'll comment on Nestor Irankunda because it may affect some other young players. Apparently, the rule is that clubs have to release players for international tournaments or international duties like this, but not if they're under 23. And not only that, but these players are being considered for the Olympics, the Olympic competition qualification games coming up. So beyond the club's desire for them, there's also a national desire to field a good team for the squad. And, you know, it's a bit much maybe to take a player away from the squad twice in a year for a tournament. So I think some of these younger players may be being saved for the Olympic tournament. So that could be part of the reason for him. And I'm particularly thinking of the forward Garang Kuol, also as one of the under 23s not selected for this tournament. Anyway, Iran Kunda was a possible but unlikely candidate anyway. Let's move on to the forward line, the attacking midfielders, and we had a likely candidate in Connor Metcalf and two possible candidates in Denny Jean-Wu and Ajdin Hrustic. Or Aiden Hrustic, what am I saying? Okay, so Connor Metcalf was selected for the squad, but neither of the possible candidates were Denny Jean-Wu and Aiden Hrustic. Okay, no secondary strikers, so we move on to the forwards, and we had a definite candidate in Mitchell Duke, and four possible candidates in Jamie McLaren, Garang Kuol, who I just mentioned, Jason Cummings, and Nicholas D'Agostino. And only Mitchell Duke was selected among those players. All four possible candidates not selected. However, we do have three new candidates selected yes, brought into the squad. And these were Bruno Fornaroli, Kusini Yangi, and John Iredale. I think among the three of them, Bruno Fornaroli is probably the prime candidate there. He was a consideration for the World Cup squad. No, he wasn't, but he had played some games before the World Cup. And I read some excitement about him, I think, in a newspaper article or in an online article. So Bruno Fornarelli probably, if there's going to be a starter among those new candidates, it would probably be him tried out, because they do have a problem for goal, for scoring goals. As much a definite candidate as Mitchell Duke was, I think these new players are being brought in to try to develop the scoring. Okay, that is the list of people, of the candidates who made it to the squad. And now we try to predict the starters in our Spotlight Review. Spotlight Review. Okay, we go back to goalkeepers. I'm actually going to give some numbers for the definite candidates so that you can just associate the player with the number. So the manager, Arnold Graham, we consider him a starter, as it were. We don't think he's in any danger of being replaced before the cup. Goalkeeper number one, Matthew Ryan. He wears the number one shirt, and we're certain that he will be the starter. We did get a hint that Gauchi might be the backup because he played the last friendly, but that didn't constitute a challenge to Matthew Ryan's position as a starter, which seems very sound. Central defenders, number 19, Harry Sutar, and look out for him scoring goals on set plays like corners up front. He's one of their top scorers. Kai Rolls, we also consider a definite starter, but we give a possible start to Cameron Burgess, or perhaps see him replacing one or the other in a bit of a rotation among the central defense there. But Sutar and number 4, Kai Rolls, the main candidates there. We're going to put a number to the left back, number 16, Aziz Behic. Although he has been challenged, we feel, in recent games by Jordan Boss. He started half of the games, half of the last 8 games or so, and 2 of the last 3. So we still give the nod to Aziz Behic, but we think it could be a rotation with Jordan Boss. At the right back, we had 3 players over the last 3 games. One of them was Miller, one of them was Strain, who ended up not being selected, and then newcomer Jones in the last match. Notably, it wasn't Atkinson in any of those matches, and he was our favoured candidate coming into the tournament. Obviously, his ankle injury may have prevented him from playing recent games, but it also may prevent him from being the starter. So we're not going to pick anyone in the right back position. In the central midfield, we're confident that it will be number 22, Jackson Irving, starting. And we think it's likely that it'll be Keanu Bacchus beside him. But O'Neill could get a chance in favour of Bacchus. So we just have Bacchus as a likely candidate there. On the left wing, though, it's quite certain that it's going to be number 23, Craig Goodwin. But the right side, a little less decided. Martin Boyle, I think everyone is anxious to see him start in a tournament. But it has been actually Connor Metcalf a little bit more in 2 of the last 3 games. So we're thinking it's going to be one or the other, or perhaps a rotation of Boyle and Metcalf. For central attacking midfielder, we did see actually Metcalf start there once too. So we think Metcalf could be a starter, but that position is not used that much. Even if it was used in 2 of the last 3 games, it was 2 different players playing it, Metcalf being one of them. So no candidates for central attacking midfield there. But in the forward line, we think it is going to be number 15, Mitchell Duke. And then special mention, we're gonna say kind of likely. It depends on his fitness, actually, his foot problem. But if he's fit, we think number 14, Riley McGree will get some starts. Let's put it that way. Okay, that is our spotlight review, our predictions of the starters, and that is the end. We are finished parts 1 and part 2 of the player preview, so we hope that prepares you well and increases your enjoyment of the Asian Cup. I'd like to thank Naver Avichan and Pixabay for the wonderful music you hear in this mediacast. The title is called Arabic Trap.